In our last podcast, we entered into that glorious tension of a leader, a business owner, entrepreneur. Do I share the load or do I do it all myself because I want it done right? Well, we want to break that tension with some very practical applications that you can start doing today.
And it doesn't even matter what size team you are. As a leader, you're still going to feel this pressure that everything comes down to me.
Step one, I do. Step two is something like I do and you watch. Step three is you do and I watch. Step four is you do. Welcome to the Live Truly Free podcast.
It doesn't even matter what size team you are, whether you're a solopreneur working on a small team, a medium-sized team, and I guess even, up to, Fortune 500 corporation.
Right.
You, as a leader, you're still going to feel this pressure that everything comes down to me and everything. And because of that, I need to be doing everything. If you want to be an effective leader, that's not going to take you very far. You have to be comfortable sharing the load with others and kind of knowing how to do that effectively.
And in fact, the day we're recording this podcast, it was just announced that the CEO of Morgan Stanley is stepping down and in the next 12 months, and the stock dropped like 1%, which is a lot for a one day. He's outpaced the S&P 500 growth of the company over the last 10 years by like double. So the world reinforces it's better if he's doing everything.
Yeah.
The world will say, don't share your load. You're perfect. You're great.
And that's why the leader feels that pressure, because especially him, he's publicly traded company, one of the biggest in the world, most influential. Yeah. I'm sure he feels all the internal pressure. Like, yes, I have to be the one to make sure we're beating that S&P 500. And if we're not, it's my fault. People still see him as the face, and just kind of like the human tendency is like the buck needs to stop with one person. And so that's what's easiest for the market and shareholders to understand. So I'm sure then he has to internalize that as well.
Yeah, I'm already planning to sell Apple when Tim Cook resigns. So so AJ, I'm curious. So in this tension world that we're talking about of share the load or do it yourself, where are you in all that?
Yeah, so I grew up playing team sports, and I feel like I kind of lean towards to share the load. But at the same time, when you start a company and it's your company, it's hard to be comfortable with that team. Like when I'm playing basketball, yeah, I could trust the four other guys to put the ball in the basket. I don't need to shoot every shot. But this is a little bit different. My money's on the line, time's on the line. A lot of people are counting on me. There's a lot of pressure there that this has to be successful because this embodies me, I guess, more than, games did.
On the basketball court, in that world that you're in, are you the team captain or are you just another player on the team?
Generally, I was just another player on the team.
I think if you're just another player on the team, it's easier to trust the other players.
Yeah. Yeah, because
I wasn't let me just say, I think if you're the leader, that's where there's a problem.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So I've been a solopreneur now a few years, and you can listen to the previous podcast to hear my story of sharing the load. But as a solopreneur and YouTube creator, podcaster, author, it's really hard for me to share the load. I mean, it's I'm getting better. I'm sharing the editing with AJ and others. but it's just hard. And here's the other thing. Here's the flip side to it. It's killing me.
Yeah. Because you see things in your head the way you want them to be. If somebody else doesn't have that image in their head, they're not going to do the same thing as what you're seeing, and you want it to come out how you want it to come out.
Right. So what I'm learning is what's the important thing I bring, and then the rest of it, I can give it away. I can share the rest of it. I don't have to do every little detail.
And while I was just like a team player on the basketball court and I wasn't the team captain or anything.
Right.
So now it's like, I would like to be able to rely on the same principles and just trust my team and be part of the team and everything will go well. But that's not where I'm at anymore. That's not my position. I have to lead the team. The team's looking to me to make sure everything's going right. I'm not just part of the team that's looking towards the leader anymore.
Right. So if you're trusting them to make the shot and they don't, you're feeling it a lot differently than if you're just another guy on the court and you grab the ball and do whatever.
Yes.
This is really good because I think it's getting down to the real rub here. And the rub is that as the leader, as the entrepreneur, business owner, leader, when the pressure's on you, the results are on you.
Yes.
And when you're just on the team, you need to play your role well, but the results aren't on you. So let's go to some specifics like successes, failures. What have we learned?
I think one of my biggest successes in terms of being able to pass something on for that pitching competition, actually, that we've talked about in the past, that I started my company, and I know I'm not artistic in the slightest. I could write a script and I could work on the points that we need to hit and kind of workshop that with people and talk through the script that I'm saying and work on that fine. But once it comes to making that script look like a beautiful image on a slide, I'm no good. And I knew that going in. So I found other people to actually make my slideshows for me, and they came out way better than I could have ever done myself. So that, I would say, is like a really good example of a success of being able to pass something on. Even though I was the one on the stage using the slideshow, I was comfortable with somebody else making it for me.
Yeah. And I'm going to say, I think that's an easy share the load.
Yeah, a good point. That
yeah.
was easy for me to share because I knew anybody else could do it better.
Yeah. Let's go to a hard thing to share the load about that you're really good at.
Yeah. One of the things this summer, just because I was feeling that pressure of I was juggling too many things, and if I add this ball, I'm not going to do it right, and it's not going to get done properly. So I had to put this on to one of the interns I was working with, and that was generating leads. Like, I could, once I have a contact with you and you schedule a meeting with me, I could get on the phone with you and I can talk you through. But it was too much for me to do all the canvassing beforehand to call the 100 people to set up those 5 phone calls. Right. So I tried to get my intern, hey, I need you to start generating leads for me, canvass this list of people, get them to schedule a meeting with us, whether it's in person or on Zoom or a phone call with me. Just, you handle that end of things, generate leads.
All right. So wait, let me ask you a question. So, because we talked about this, that a big piece to sharing the load is like good instructions, mentoring, guiding them along the way. It sounds like you did a lot of that.
I definitely could have done better. I did okay. Like, I gave him a list of leads. I kind of talked him through, like, what are you doing? And then
did you give him a script? Did you give him a script?
I gave him like the first message to send. And then I was like, I'm trusting you to be like
I'm throwing you in the pool and I'm trusting you're going to be able to swim back to the side.
Exactly. Okay. So I definitely could have done a better job of mentoring him.
Okay. All right.
But this was, and again, this is my first run at things. So I'm learning and making mistakes as I go.
Right.
And that was a big one, not mentoring him right, because then the leads weren't getting generated and I wasn't having the appointments I needed to have. I knew I had to give up something, and I don't know if I gave up the wrong thing or what we're talking about here. I gave up probably the right thing, but I didn't give it up in the right way.
I'm guilty of something similar where it's like I'm going like I'm all in. I'm going to share the load, and I hand it off to you, but part of the handoff is me letting go. Now, if you could see me on the podcast, you'd see my hand is still holding whatever it is. So like here, I've got a piece of paper here. I've got a document, and I'm going to hand you this document. I'm going to hand you this thing to go do. But if I don't let go of it, and so you're tugging on it and I'm pulling back, that is really common for me.
Okay.
And it has led to, well, how can they do a very good job? They can't.
Yeah, because you haven't
I,
given it to them.
I've actually, what I've actually done is worse. I've really set them up for failure.
And set yourself up for failure in doing so.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And so now I've got double pressure. I've got this person I got to go take care of and make sure they do it right. Well, I could have done it myself. Plus, I wasted all this time telling to explain what to do. And it's just a nightmare. I didn't share the load.
Yeah. And so I guess we're talking about results and sharing the load, and the results ultimately go down to you as the leader, right?
Right.
The face of the company. How do you let go when the results aren't as good as you expected or that you would have done? Like, well, I guess we both noticed that there's, the leader can actually poison this from the beginning by not letting go. But how do you deal with it if you do actually let go and then the results aren't what you wanted?
So there's a couple of possibilities going on with that. And that's happened to me a lot. I think so. Here's what I think is key, and we really drill it in the previous podcast, and that is you've got to provide mentoring, you've got to provide instruction. And so if you're looking for a quick fix, guys, to where, hey, I've decided to share the load and boom, it was an utter failure. That was the dumbest thing in the world. And the reaction is, and the lesson learned is, it's better just to do it myself.
Yeah.
If I want it done right, do it myself. And guys, men in particular, this mentality I have seen in so many men, including myself, and it sources in hurt places in our lives, like even as a kid.
Hmm.
And this stuff creeps in and it becomes this is a survival technique. And
Okay.
and so that's why I'm saying this share the load has to be an attitude. It has to be a deep seated attitude that this is the kind of person I'm going to become. Well, to become a share the load kind of person, you better start mentoring people. So
Yeah.
take your intern. Okay. You can't, well, first of all, an intern's by the very name is just, there for a few weeks or something like that. But
Hmm.
let's say it's an intern position that's going to lead to a full-time position.
That's what it was.
Okay. And so I have to invest in these people. And some of them are going to produce and some of them aren't. And so the answer isn't a quick fix. The answer is you have to start investing in that person and training them. You can train through modeling to them how to do what you're doing. Now,
Yeah.
this is all predicated on one very, very important thing. Are they capable?
Yes. And also, I'm seeing something that you're talking about. There's got to be what's the line between letting go and mentoring? Or like, if I'm holding on too much because I'm still trying to tell you how to do it exactly so you do it right, versus I'm just kind of guiding you to make sure you do it right, but it's more of a hands off, I've let go.
I think this is real easy to remember. Step one, I do. Step two is something like I do and you watch. And then step three is you do and I watch. And then step four is you do. You take them through this process for whatever it is, and you're right there alongside them. But at some point, and I think that's the fine line, you have to have some point where you let go. And so
Yeah.
your objective, if your lifestyle decision is, I'm going to share the load, then you're headed to that fourth square where you do. You're going to do it.
Yeah. And I like how you frame that. It's like adding that to with your attitude of letting go and getting over, past disappointments of when you let go and it hurt, it backfired, and kind of accepting the fact that if I let go, things are going to go a lot better in a lot of places, and then the ball's going to get dropped some places, but we have to be okay with that and use those as lessons to learn for how to, better let people do this in the future, or whatever the case is, find a better person, but also have a process for doing it so that when you let go, it's not as much of a 50-50 chance this goes well or it doesn't. You're doing it by the same process of letting go so that you've seen before and demonstrated to people, and then people can take it up on their own.
Yeah. And let me underscore something that's a very, very powerful force that you just kind of alluded to, and that is the failure part. So when it comes back and you're looking at it just going, and I can't tell you how many times I've seen this for me, and I literally make a deal. And the deal is this: I'm never going to share the load again. All right. And you could call it an agreement. Like we make a deal, we make an agreement, and we sign the agreement and we have a transaction. That's exactly the same thing. And
Mhm.
so I make this agreement. Well, you see, sharing the load doesn't work. That podcast and with George and AJ, they don't know what they're talking about. Okay. We make these agreements and they are false agreements. Well, sometimes you make a bad deal, break the deal. Just go back and say, I'm undoing this deal. I'm not going to agree to this deal anymore. I'm
Mhm.
unagreeing to the deal. I break the agreement. And you just got to keep doing that. You've got to be ruthless. And that's why I think this is an internal thing. I really do. And I think then, let me tell you something. If you have a ruthless agreement that I am going to share the load no matter what, how much a better job would you have done in finding a capable intern?
I would have done a better job for sure because I would have done a more thorough search. I would have been much more deliberate in what I was looking for and kind of mapped out exactly what I knew I needed rather than kind of just like, oh, you seem pretty good. We'll test you out, you know? It was kind of how it went rather than
Why would you have done a better job?
because like because the way you stipulated it, I have no other choice,
Right.
right? Because the way I actually approached it was like I need some people to be able to help with some things. I don't exactly know what those are, but I'll pawn off what I can, and if they're not able to take it, I'll just do more. Like I had the agreement was I'll bring in these people to share the load with, but if they can't share the load, I won't share the load.
Well, then
Rather
you were
than
never sharing the load.
yeah,
And I think this phrase, share the load, which comes from ancient history. Okay. Listen to the previous podcast for the source on that. Here's the irony to the whole story you told. You had no room for error. In other words, which is the share the load thing. In other words, you had too much to do, is what you said. So that's why you brought this person in. And as it turned out, this person created more work, not less work.
yeah,
And
managing this person was more work for me than
because here's how you shared the load, just like George. So George right now is holding this white envelope and he's not letting go of it while he hands it to you to share the load. And so you grab the envelope because you think George is going to release it to you, and he doesn't because he's not really sharing the load.
yeah.
He keeps, so go back to that little 4-step thing. I do. And so in my world, not sharing the load, but saying I am sharing the load is I do. Those are the 4 steps. And I have literally had those moments where like I'm showing some people how to do something and I do all the work and they just stand there and watch.
So you do. So actually, your process is I do. I'll ask you to do, but then I'll do it and you just watch.
Yeah, something like that. Exactly. Yeah, that's it's hilarious and sadly very true. So here's the mindset. Let this mindset of share the load, you have to let that begin to lead you into the habit of sharing the load. Okay. But that's not where you stop. You have to begin practicing out of that habit, empowering and mentoring others with whom you're sharing the load around you. This is the secret to how top leaders get more done. And it's an attitude inside of you that works its way out into real life actions every single day. For more on this topic, check out this podcast from last week. I know you're going to love it. And in the meantime, may you live truly free.